Hey listeners, Mallory Wilsey here, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network. I get the privilege of working alongside all of our creators at Enrollify, but I wanted to take just a quick moment to tell you about why I love the Talking Tactics podcast hosted by Diana Kibbolds. Every other Tuesday, Day drops a new episode where she focuses on a single tactic that moved the needle on any enrollment metric, from inquiries and booth visitors to apps completed and deposits, even registrations, you name it. The catch? The tactic had to be done with limited resources, either by a single person or a small but mighty team, or limited time, or maybe without a lot of money. The podcast format is fun and engaging, and it's just different from the more traditional 60-minute interview style shows. If you work in enrollment management or marketing, be sure to give Day's show a listen. You can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Talking Tactics wherever you get your podcasts. We, I think, are seen as the slow-moving industry of tech laggards because guess what? We are.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your Monday morning energizer covering insights and trends in higher ed marketing and enrollment. I'm Mallory Wilsey, bringing over 15 years of ed tech and marketing expertise to your earbuds.
And I'm Seth Odell, joining the Pulse with my own adventures from leading marketing at top universities to founding Kanahoma, one of the industry's fastest growing digital marketing agencies.
Each week, we bring you the kind of insider insights you typically only find over cocktails with your pals at a conference.
It's fast, it's fun, and it's designed for you, the busy higher ed professional.
You're not just listening to another podcast.
You're checking the pulse of higher education.
Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher ed professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. All right, Seth, it's been a few weeks. The question on everyone's mind, how is the paper crane project coming?
It's a great question for folks that remember I have set out and am determined to fold 1,000 paper cranes. So first off, for those of you watching on YouTube, as you know, we now post the videos, I'm holding up a box with 1,000 paper cranes. I'm kidding, I'm not. I'm holding up a single paper crane because I've literally folded like a dozen. But for the listeners, I almost had you. Like, you almost were like, this guy folded 1,000 paper cranes in a month? No, I have folded a dozen, and it takes a really long time, and it's going. But you know what, Mallory? I am committed, and once I decide to do things, I do them, and so I can't say how long it's going to take. I hope it becomes more enjoyable, but I am going to muscle and grind this out, if nothing else, and or find my peace somewhere along in this process.
Or you're going to find you're crazy. I don't know if it takes that long to fold a single one.
It could be both. I just, you got to make some time. The problem is I'm still watching YouTube tutorial videos. And so it's like, once I get this memorized, it's a long process for those who haven't folded a paper crane. Once I get that in the rhythm, I can do it anywhere. You know what I mean? But like, till then, it's like I'm like a student very much in need of a teacher.
Can you hold it up one more time? I just want to
again, for those listening, I'm holding up that box of 1,000 paper cranes. Right. Okay, it's one of my paper cranes.
It's very cute, though. For the record,
though.
It's very nice. And
I'm taking it seriously.
Well, and I'm calling dibs because you did commit to me a few weeks ago that you were going to put one in my holiday box. So I think that's it right there.
There you go. You're going to get one of the very first ones. I am committing to that.
Oh, so you're going to give me one of the crappy ones. Okay, cool.
Yeah, you know what? It's exactly. The really good ones are going to somebody else higher up on the list.
All right, well, let's just get into today's episode. The inspiration for today is listener requested. Once again, that hot LinkedIn post from a couple months ago. So this week we picked Rob Conlon's response. Rob happens to be part of our production team. He runs Westport Studios, which is incredible, by the way. Free plug for Rob and his team. They're amazing. But he asked us, Seth, how do you move the overall attitude of higher ed being behind forward, right? There's that sentiment that exists out in the wild.
So what are the things that have to happen to stop both people from the industry and also the outsiders from accurately saying that?
Yeah, I think it's a great topic. I'm really excited to unpack it. I know it's bigger than just marketing enrollment, but I think for those of us that work in the industry, like, hopefully everybody listening, or most likely everybody listening, we hear this stuff, right? We tell our friends and family, or we tell each other as colleagues. We know as an industry we're not as advanced or far along as we could be. And so I think the first is the what and maybe the why, and then what can be done about it. And on the what side, I'll say that, I think higher ed by and large moves slow. We are a very old institution from a traditional college perspective overall. It's thousands of years old. And obviously for those of us listening within the U.S., which is a lot of folks, where many cases institutions are hundreds of years old, but the industry is pretty standardized and pretty structured. It's not always one that is quick to innovate. Some of that is structural, like with literal credit hour restrictions and accreditors, and some of it is more just cultural. A lot of public institutions have state workers, just folks that stay for a very long time. Turnover is not always as common. An appetite for innovation is not always embraced, and so yes, I do think as an industry we move slow, obviously compared to things like technology. I would say probably like a sister industry is more maybe healthcare that's undergoing its own innovations right now and its own challenges. And so I think it's a fair statement that higher ed is often behind. And so I'm excited today to unpack a little bit about why we think that is and what we can do about it. But I don't know if you have any takes. I just want to think it's like a fair statement. I think I hear that all the time. And of course there are exceptions, but by and large, we are an industry that maybe needs a nudge now and then more than others.
Well, higher ed also has a problem with status quo and just doing the things that we've always done because we've always done them. And sometimes I think that comes from the top down. And when you look at the top at a lot of institutions, you have people who have maybe been in their role for decades and decades and decades. And it's hard to innovate when you're comfortable. And so I think that that's part of the problem. I'm not advocating for firing people by any means, but higher ed also doesn't really do that either. And so we kind of have a problem with people, being stagnant or stuck in their role for maybe too long. And then, staff members and faculty members who are underperformers, but are just never let go. And it's really hard to be a high performer in that environment. And I think that's exactly why we're seeing this talent shortage and brain drain from the industry. And I think that is all influencing this idea that higher ed is slow to change and constantly behind the times.
Yeah, I think that's super fair. I think, when you think about why might we be slow to adapt and change as an industry, there's a couple things. The first on the more marketing side, for those of us that are tacticians, I would say the reason that we do the things we did yesterday is that they worked yesterday. And so the reality is we do the same things because the same things have historically worked, and we have very long recruitment cycles. So, from the traditional market perspective, as far as high school students, you're recruiting students over the course at least of months, often of years for most institutions that are recruiting folks past senior year. And so when it comes to introducing something new and seeing how it's going, it can take years to turn and round that corner. And the reality is most of the things worked yesterday, but they're not working today. So the first is that things worked. The second is I think that there's a misalignment in incentive structures when it comes to the fact that we are under disruption. So as an industry, we are under disruption. There's 4,000 colleges and universities in this country. And by and large, we are geographically dispersed because we were built at a time when quite literally the United States was expanding from colonies on the east, moving west. And we wanted to, basically institutions were set up in more or less every city and major town across the country. And education was geographically dispersed. But the reality is it does not need to be anymore. And the mode of transportations has changed. So people are willing to travel more than they used to. And so we have all these colleges all dispersed. And it's do we really need that anymore? Do we need 4,000 colleges? And so I think there's a reality that part of the contraction that's happening is fair, but it's coming from a disruption that's much bigger than higher ed, and the incentive structure, back to my initial point, is not aligned. Meaning folks that are in the role they're incentivized to basically reduce the bleeding and stabilize as best possible and ride it out. And I think we've all seen that in our career where it's those people who are, whether they're close to retirement or close to moving on, they're not looking to rock the boat. And, unfortunately, I think we need leadership and participation in this industry that is very disruptive, but may even be painful in the short term. And not everybody wants to come in and drive that kind of change. And so we need like short-term pain for long-term gain, but who's going to be here in the short term to do it? And the folks that are here that are willing to do it are often not the ones that are empowered to do it, as far as in the right roles, in the right seats. And so that was a lot, but those are a few reasons why I think we're facing some headwinds when it comes to this.
Along those same lines, higher ed needs to start fully integrating technology from brand building and recruiting students to positively impacting the on-campus or online student experience. And that's not just like, oh, now we offer online classes, but it's leading tech innovation, not reluctantly following it. I am just in my short career in higher ed, I have watched it, not embrace websites, not embrace mobile, not embrace influencer marketing. And now I'm kind of seeing not a widespread embracing of AI. And, we, I think, are seen as the slow moving industry of tech laggards because guess what? We are.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Well, so technology is a big one. I think there's a few categories to think about, and technology is totally one. I think the reality is that higher ed is not in the software development business. In some cases it is and probably shouldn't be. And so we are reliant on other folks to come in and provide that. And I think that is one of the disconnects, is that a lot of the technology being developed is not necessarily been developed by the folks that are going to be practitioners using it. The technology in this space that I like the most, and I'm not, not to be too complimentary, but for Element 451, I find that technology to be fantastic because I feel like it was designed by people that are practitioners that understand the needs of folks. And I often don't see that. I often see a disconnect where it's is this really the solution? So I think technology is a huge piece. It also comes with a big price tag, and folks are nervous to make that. It goes back to the fear of change. The other one I would say is on the product side. And so much of our industry is driven by product, and we are by and large selling degrees, but we've seen consumer confidence in the degree decline. We see that people are looking to decouple the degree, that they're looking to learn faster, go further on a shorter timeline. And while there is a desire to move in that direction, our whole system is built around traditional 4-year degrees for the undergraduate level and bachelor's and master's programs. And so I guess the question I would pose is it even possible to reposition us as an industry if we don't revamp our product? And I'd like to think we could either way, but I'm not sure. If we were selling the same product, maybe we can sell it in a better way, but it feels like we may have a product problem as well as an overarching kind of perception problem.
Hey there, it's Mallory, Chief Strategist of Enrollify. Higher ed is facing a leadership crisis. The demands on today's college and university leaders are skyrocketing, and talent is leaving the industry at an unprecedented rate. New leaders like you are emerging, but no one is getting the proper training to be successful. Well, Enrollify is here to change that. Our new course, Lessons in Leadership, taught by Dr. Carrie Phillips, will prepare you to be a confident, empathetic, and effective leader. From systems thinking to adaptive leadership, building culture to handling difficult decisions, this comprehensive online course is perfect for new and aspiring leaders. Don't wait. The course starts September 9th, and for a lucky group of 26 students, we have the option to add interactive sessions with Dr. Phillips for personalized guidance. Visit Enrollify.org to learn more. Yeah, everything else in our life is modular, and the degree is not. And so allowing students to actually build their educational experience in a more modular way that's going to fit their life circumstances, their career goals, the expertise that they might already be bringing to the table, and just giving more flexibility to those learning options beyond just the degree. Certainly, we've seen a rise in micro-credentials and certificates and different competency-based, opportunities. But why can't we, just become more flexible overall? And maybe the whole industry just needs to reposition itself away from this thing that happens when you're 18 to 21 years old and really start thinking about that lifelong learner, right? And it's not a 4-year stint. It is access to lifelong learning. So I've mentioned this actually before, Medill, where I got my graduate degree from, offers alumni continued access to courses and resources and career services just in a way that I don't see a lot of other institutions offer. And it makes
the degree that I got from them that much more valuable as a result.
Yeah, I think it highlights too the fact that so many institutions in our space, the vast majority, almost all, are incumbents and have been around for a long time. And so when it comes to innovation, which I think really is the crux of this conversation in many ways, is the innovation that's, this disruption that's taking place and the lack of response in many cases. The reality is most college universities today are turnarounds, not startups. And so, a turnaround is fundamentally different than a startup. And I've been able to work through both in different environments. And, it is very, very difficult to do a turnaround in a traditional college university unless you create a startup culture. So like when I was at Southern New Hampshire University, they built a branch campus, which meant they actually had an independent campus with its own governance. It was physically, literally not located on campus. And it was treated like a startup so it could move faster and it could deploy sooner. Without that, it's quite difficult to take like an established bureaucratic institution and ask it to suddenly operate differently. And so I think that's another like big challenge. So I think there are like operational things that can be done, like focusing on the products differently, thinking about like actually how you structure innovation and you foster it. The other one I think that's worth hitting on a little bit is people, not to bring up always the sad subject, but like we churn talent in this industry nonstop. And like, how do we recruit and retain top talent that want to come and be a part of that? Some of that is vision setting, but some of that is also table stakes, which is like allowing people to work fully remotely and investing in professional development. Like these are all the things that we don't do and that we underpay and then we expect people to stay and then they don't. And, that's understandable. And so I think the people side of this is also huge. And I don't think the talent that's needed to drive this kind of change and reposition higher ed and rebrand higher ed is necessarily in the industry, but it has been. Like I've seen it come in and leave. And so there's something in there about talent, recruitment, and retention that I think is really a cornerstone of this conversation too.
I think you nailed it. I have always found it very ironic that, when budget cuts are made, typically professional development is cut first. And that just like we work in the education industry. Like, isn't there some irony there that is the first thing that we cut and we don't actually prioritize it? Like, we have to make professional development a non-negotiable priority instead of the first thing that hits the chopping block, because then people will actually learn, and learning is what can help overcome all the challenges that we were just talking about.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so I think like when I think about how do you rebrand higher ed and get away from being seen as like slower and older, there's like a few like final thoughts that I would share. The first one is that I don't think we should think about repositioning the industry. We should think about repositioning the institution. And that's whatever institution you're at, whether you're part of the ivory tower or you're outside of it, like we are working for institutions that support the overall industry. Like you cannot reposition an industry, but you can change institutions that then change the perception of the industry they are in. And so I think the first is we collectively need to narrow our focus and ask ourselves, like, are we in positions of influence where we can make a difference? And I think like put on rose-colored glasses and see it optimistically. I think the work that you all are doing from a tech perspective is super exciting. I'd like to think at Kanahoma we're better employers and we've built a little bit of a better agency of record model. Like believe that you're introducing change and then support people. So to me, it's about people, it's about products, it's about institutions over industry. And I think finally, it's about maintaining this mentality that if we're here, it's worth trying. I love the higher ed space. I love the industry. I think the critiques of it are fair and earned, but I think education is more important than ever. My grandfather always said education is the great equalizer. It provides opportunity. Paul, the president from SNU, always said that, the world equally distributes talent, but doesn't equally distribute opportunity, and education can be a way to bridge that. I believe in this space more than ever, even if I think it needs to undergo change. And so at the end of the day, it's like, how do you stay optimistic in the face of those things? And I think that is a constant challenge we need to rise to each and every day. We log in or walk in and get ready to go to work.
So everything you just mentioned, Seth, leads me to have to remind listeners, we have a new Pulse Check series starting on Thursday. Kin Sejpal is back for her third and final Pulse Check series of the year. And a beautiful dovetail to this conversation, it is titled Finding Your Why. We think higher ed is clearly facing a crisis of confidence. And once seen as a no-brainer, the value of college is now up for debate. Doubt spreads into the hearts and minds of those who are working in higher ed. And for all the things that we have talked about today, this is why I am so excited for this series. Kin is going to bring together top leaders to share their stories, to help you reignite your passion for being in this industry. So you'll be able to hear from folks who've found their purpose and get some practical tips to help you find more meaning in the work that you're doing.
I love it. And I hope you folks tune into that. And I just hope we all stay part of the conversation and participate. I don't think half of it is just like, let's not give up. I think it's an incredibly important industry. I feel like incredibly lucky and blessed to be a part of it. But I think the call out from the early part of the conversation is fair. It kind of needs a rebrand, and it comes with a real reposition and a real thoughtful self-reflection and maybe some necessary change. And so it's a great conversation, and I love that it's going to be continuing in such a substantive way.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you tune into that on Thursday, and Seth and I will see you back here next week. Thanks so much, Seth. Bye, everybody.
The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.